College essays. Where do you begin? I can't tell you how many times I've sat with students and they just look at me like a deer caught in the headlights. They have no clue what to do. They've been told so many things, what to write, what not to write. So what is the answer? What do I put in my college essay? Well, the answer is there's no answer. Again, one of the things we do in our process here is through getting to know students over time, by the time we get to writing that essay, we have a really good sense of who they are. We have a really good sense of what they value, who they value. We have a really good sense of what their strengths are and what their challenges are. From that place, from truly getting to know them, that's where great essays come from. And instead of me just pontificating about what makes a great essay, I'm gonna tell you a story about someone I worked with. I won't use his name, though I'm sure he would actually be fine with me using his name. I'd gotten to know him pretty well, and he maybe wasn't the strongest writer in the world, to be totally honest. And he was really struggling with what he was gonna write his essay on. And we were talking. And one of the things that he really enjoyed in school was being in his school band. And he played the tuba. And I remember being kind of fascinated with that. I had seen tubas on TV or maybe when I was in school in the band, but I had never been up close and seen one personally. So one day I asked him if he could show it to me. So he went and grabbed it and he played it a little and I held it. And I was so impressed with it as an instrument. And as we talked about it, we got in a conversation about why he was drawn to that instrument. I didn't know what role the tuba had in a band, but the way he explained it to me was that the tuba was this instrument that didn't stand out. No one really noticed the tuba player. But you noticed if the tuba player wasn't doing well. You didn't really notice if they were doing everything that they were supposed to be doing, but if they were out of time, if they were out of beat, if they hit a note in the wrong way, it could really throw off the whole band. And the way he described it, he was describing this solidity, this steadiness, this steadfastness that sort of is quiet, but really, really important. And at one point I looked at him and I said, you know what it sounds like you're describing? He said, what? I said, yourself. And he looked at me and it was literally one of those light bulb moments. He broke into a smile and he said, I guess I am kind of like a tuba, huh? And we laughed. And then I looked at him and I said, you know what that is, don't you? And he looked at me and he said, that's my essay. Bam, right? That was his essay. So we set about writing a draft of an essay that compared him to a tuba. And as crazy as that sounded, it ended up being such a wonderful essay. And more importantly than that, right? It was such a wonderful process for him. It was such a process of discovery. It was connecting this activity that he had derived a lot of pleasure from out of through high school, and all of a sudden he realized, wow, there's a reason why I was drawn to the tuba. It really fits my personality. So I share that story, I guess, to indicate how important it is. When we talk about truly getting to know students, that's why it's important to get to know them. We could have never arrived at that essay if I hadn't taken time to get to know who he was, what he valued, what he cared about, what he felt passionately about. And it came across in the essay. Now, I mean, he also got into his #1 school. I don't know if the essay had anything to do with it. I know it didn't hurt. I know that for a fact. I know that essay did not hurt his application process. So as we're working with students, we're really trying to get to know them, because how can we help someone form a reasonable college list if we're not getting to know who they are, what they want, what they value, what area of the country they might want to be in, whether they want a small university or a large university. We have to truly get to know them to make that happen. That can't be done through questionnaires. That can't be done in a dry way. I think it has to be done in an authentic way. This is an important process. this next stage of their life, and it needs to be treated as such. So to circle back to essay topics, not everyone's going to be able to write an essay about a tuba or an instrument that they may be like. One of the things that I tell students generally to give a lot of thought to is a lot of students will take a service trip, and it can be a really profound experience. I think those type of things can be challenging to write about. And what I mean by that is that you have to remember that these colleges are reading many, many essays. So they're reading many essays by students who say, you know, I went to Honduras on a service trip to help people build a school, and they were impoverished, and really I came away learning more about myself. I was the one who received the gift. Sometimes I'll say to students, okay, you know, I don't want to disrespect that, because I know that can be authentic and true. I think it can be really hard to portray that in an essay in a way that separates you from other people that are writing really similar things. So I think you have to be really careful about that and remember that they're reading a lot of essays, and take that into account. That being said, I also caution students and families to not give too much thought to what the reader may be thinking. And what I mean by that is you have no clue who's going to be reading your essay. You don't know if they're going to be conservative or liberal. You don't know if they're going to be a man or a woman or identify in some other way. You don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about their values. You don't know anything about whether they have children. You don't know anything about them at all. So to get too caught up in your head about what they want to hear, that's a little bit of a conundrum, right? You start to go down that rabbit hole, and then you're moving further and further away from your voice and further away from your authenticity. So I think that when students and families are doing that, I always try to reel them back in and say, hey, let's not worry about what they want to hear. Let's worry about what you want to say. So what do you want to say? What are some valuable things to say? One of the pieces of advice I give students is to go narrow and deep. Now, that's hard too, because how narrow and deep can you go in 650 words? Which is what the main essay is on the Common application. And schools that don't accept it, usually their main essay is in that range as well. You know, we're talking about a 5-paragraph essay when all is said and done. You can't go too deep. But I think rather than try to go really broad in 650 words, it's picking something that is valuable to you. It's picking something that's meaningful to you. It's picking a situation that seemed really small at the time, but ended up having a profound effect on you. It's taking an aspect of who you are that a stranger might not even notice, and digging deep and writing about what that says about you. I've had students write about a song that had deep meaning to them, and why. I helped a student one time write an essay that was about how he thought the college application process was broken. It was an excellent essay. It was daring, but that's who he was as a student. And it wasn't disrespectful, but it was his opinion, and it was strong. I've helped students write stories about some small event that happened when they were children. One time I helped a student write an essay about how he remembered at 5 years old leaving his bedroom and running away in the middle of the night because he had had some silly argument with his parents, and sort of the craziness that ensued from him wandering up the street by himself in the night. Right? These are examples of narrow but deep. Most importantly, what they're examples of are essays that only that student could write. And And so going back to what I said about maybe writing about a service trip, and I'm never going to tell someone not to write about that. I think the danger in essays like that is that many other people could write that essay or a really close version of that essay. What you really want to be thinking of is writing an essay that only you could write. I also think that multiple drafts are really important when you're considering your essay. What I really encourage students to do at the get-go is when we come up with an idea, just write. Just write. I don't care if it ends up being 1,500 words. Usually what happens, at least in the way in which we undergo the process, is the first draft of that essay, and I always keep that to show students at the end, is only mildly related to what the final product ends up being. Sometimes students will write an essay that is 2 or 3 pages long, and there is literally one paragraph that we keep. You'll read through it, and you'll get to that paragraph, and you'll say, there it is. There's the essay. There have been times I've worked with students who have written a solid first draft of an essay, and we've kept none of it because it's led us to another idea. But no matter how much of it gets kept or does not get kept, it is a valuable, valuable step in the process. So I always encourage students at the beginning of writing, we don't want to be too attached to the results. The first draft is nowhere near where we will end up. Once that main essay is completed, or it's fairly far along in the process, there are numerous supplemental pieces of writing that will need to be done as well. Some of them, quite frankly, in my opinion, are lame. Why do you want to come to Boston University? Sometimes I think to myself, they can't do better than that. Some of the essays are a little bit more directed and profound. Some think way out of the box. There are some schools that will ask really unique questions. What superhero do you relate to and why? What's your favorite song and why? What's the last book you read and what did you think about it? Those are questions, frankly, I'm a big fan of because I think it tells you more about a potential student. Sometimes as we go through the process, there's overlap. We always want to try to be utilizing an essay in more than one place if we can. If 2 schools are asking for a supplemental essay of 250 words around what it is you want to study, well then those schools can both get given the same essay, obviously with references to that particular school sort of adjusted and taken out as necessary. But I think that if someone is applying to a dozen schools, typically at least 3/4 of those schools will have supplemental writing. So in addition to the main essay, there's probably going to be anywhere from on the low end 6 or 7 to on the high end 15 pieces of supplemental writing. So there's a great deal of writing to be done in this process. What I always say to families and students is, I know it's easy for me to say because I'm not the one that has to do it, I think the more writing that they ask for, the better. Most schools don't offer interviews anymore. Writing is the only opportunity you have to not be a number, to not be a GPA, to not be a test score, to not be a curriculum, to actually give a voice to who you are, to flesh yourself out in a multi-dimensional way. So the more writing there is, I think it should be seen as a gift and not a curse. So again, that's just a brief snapshot of college essay writing, sort of how we approach it, some things to be considering. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and we're more than happy to help. Again, we have a pretty streamlined and effective process to help students and families get through the college application journey. So if you know you'd want to do that, you can always schedule a 20-minute strategy session, and we're always excited to connect with people. So again, thanks for taking the time. Your next video will be in your box in a couple of days if you're not sick of me yet. And thank you. Have a great day.